Welcome, everyone. My name is Eitan Stern. I'm the director of Legalese. It's a picture of myself. So for those that don't know Legalese, we are what we call a creative legal agency. We are a bunch of lawyers that do work specifically for the creative and tech industry. We've been on this mission to redesign legal services to make them suit entrepreneurs and startups. And small businesses and creative businesses. And that's what we've been doing for the last, moving on just over 7 years now. A couple of pictures of our team. This is actually quite interesting. We're now a year into doing these webinars. And so we really thought this would be a thing of COVID. We thought once COVID ended, so with these webinars, but there's still been a need for them, or a request for them at least. And we enjoy doing them. And we find they're a really great way to communicate to our clients and to get some of these messages out there that we're trying to push around legal safety and compliance. So for everyone that makes time to attend these, I'm very grateful. It's really nice to see. If you've attended more than one in the past, we're super grateful. So from all of us at Team Legalese, thank you for joining us. One thing just before we start, now, legal advice is very specific. So today we're going to be talking about things quite in general. We're going to be going through what we like to call legal road mapping. But it still is quite general advice. I think there's going to be a lot that's quite applicable for you in your business. But if you're looking for specific legal advice, then my advice is that you consider taking legal advice which is going to look at your business within its context. So while the messages and things that we're going to talk about today are definitely going to be relevant, if you want to rely on something specifically for your business, then it's definitely worth chatting to us or chatting to a lawyer. I can already hear the jokes out there about lawyers and the fine print, which I'll take, which is fine, but there is the legal fine print. All right, so what are we here for today? So today we're going to be looking at what we call legal road mapping, right? So our view is that lawyers and legal services are best used before a problem arises. So traditionally, lawyers are there to fix problems, right? But our way of doing things has always been to be a little bit more constructive. So we look at how businesses are set up and how business structures are created in order to prevent issues from arising in the first place. And we've been on this mission, as I said, for about 7 years, and it works well, but it is a change in the way that lawyers do things. So what I want to do today is I want to look at some of the strategy on how we do that. And I want to look at how we roadmap our clients' legal issues to make sure that we are preventing issues rather than fixing them. So what I want to go through is our process. And my hope is that it will encourage people to go through a process like this by yourself. If everyone has pen and paper with them, that's going to be useful. I want this to be a bit of a work session so we can start putting some of the things into practice. And this might be something you do yourself. It might be something that you do with your team as part of your strategy for the year, or it might be something that you do with a lawyer. Either way, it's going to work. It might, legal road mapping might also be something that you do that a funder might require you to do if they're ever doing due diligence into your business. So, just like every business requires strategy sessions of one type or another, this kind of legal strategy is a really important one from our point of view. And when it comes to legal strategy, planning ahead is really crucial to save time and money. So, it's a bit of a thing that you need to do now in order to kind of figure out what's your legal strategy, how are you road mapping your legal issues for the year. But the idea is that should save you time and money later because it prevents issues from arising. All righty. Just one matter of housekeeping. If you have questions, you can shoot them into the questions thing or the chat box. I will monitor it. I'll do my best to monitor it. I'll keep it actually open right here. And I'll do my best to monitor it during the thing. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask them. Otherwise, at the end, we will make time for question and answer. I suppose the last thing just to say is I'm doing this from home. So if a dog starts barking, bear with me. All righty. So let's dig in. So it's no secret that The legal stuff behind a business is not what any business owner wakes up in the morning excited to do. And the legal stuff is often like the annoying or the grudge stuff that kind of gets in the way of the fun aspects behind running a business and being creative. And it's for this reason that it often gets left off to the bottom of the to-do list. And it kind of fits into this, well, I'll get to that stuff in one day. It fits in that kind of category. And this is stuff like shareholders agreements. This might be your website terms. This might be your supplier arrangements to manage your IP. And I don't imagine that anyone is going to need a cold bucket of water thrown over them when I read those names. But as business owners, we have to realize that this stuff is pretty important. And these things create structure and longevity in a business. So the example I always like is, building a building. You can't build it without solid foundations. I'm sure everyone's heard that example from lawyers in the past. But it's true. We need to if you are looking to run a business with sustainably and with longevity, you need to put these structures in place, even if they're not fun. So what we found that works best with creating legal strategy is much like any other strategy. You need to set goals of what you're trying to achieve. You need to then create priorities, prioritize these things that you need to do now, do in 6 months, a year, or at some point in the future. You need to assign a budget, just like anything. You need to make sure that you are assigning the right amount of money to pay for this sort of thing. And then you need to create a timeline. When do you need to get this stuff done? And that is looking at, are there any due dates for compliance that you're forced into getting the stuff done? Or do you have funders' due dates that you need to meet? Or is this something kind of self-imposed timelines? Timelines work really well for these sort of tasks. And this process we call a legal roadmap, right? And this is a product that we've built and one which we're really proud of, and which I am going to show you at the end of the session how we do it. But before we do that, I want to go through our thinking on how we create this legal roadmap. And I want to show you a process that you can do it yourself for your business so that you can understand your legal needs from the start, right? Or you can understand your legal needs at any point. So before you embark on a procedure and go to a lawyer and say, look, I need you to help us all this, get our legal stuff sorted, it's a good exercise to go through so you can understand yourself what you need to do. As I said before, any business of any size should and can do this. So definitely startups who need to plan out how they're going to start their businesses. It also works really well for growing companies. As you are growing and your needs are changing, your business is changing, and you're hitting some traction, it's a really good idea to do a process like this. It could also be an annual audit that you do. And as I said earlier, certainly companies that are going through any sort of due diligence for a sale, it's a really good idea to go through something like this. All right. So as I said, I am going to show you our way of doing this at the end. But before then, I want to show you what we call the legal strategy wheel. Now, I hope that people have pen and paper around them. If you do, maybe I'll wait a second for you to just grab something. I mean, ideal is that you've got maybe 2 or 3 different colors. I would like for you to do this exercise at the same time as I do it, so that at least your legal road mapping or your legal planning for the year has started. All right. I'm going to assume people have it. If you had a computer, I mean, you can definitely also use your computer to write notes on this, but I actually think drawing it up is a nice way to go about it. Okay. So what I want you to do is put a circle in the middle of the piece of paper, right? And write your company name in there. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is that law is really just a matter of managing relationships. And that is kind of core to it. Even when you look at litigation and, court cases, this is people that have a relationship that have landed up in a dispute, and they're using litigation as a way to resolve that dispute. But really, just about everything in relation to law is around relationships, right? Some of those might be personal relationships that you have with one another. Some of those might be business relationships, or those might be our relationships with the world around us, with government institutions, or with certain types of legal assets or things. Right. And if we really zoom out, maybe a little bit of unnecessary jurisprudence, law, that's really the extent of law, right? Like, rights are only rights because someone has a corresponding obligation. So, if you have the right to to water, then your government will have the corresponding obligation to provide that. And if you have a legal duty to not drive your car at 1,000 kilometers an hour or 500 kilometers an hour down the highway, that's because other people have rights to road safety. So law is always going to be an aspect of relationships. And when we start to think about it like that, I really think we can humanize what we're trying to do with our legal compliance and safety in our businesses. Right? It's cool. So you've got your company in the middle. And before we kind of dig in too deep and start to think of all the different relationships that our business has, we can really start to view it as 4 different types, right? We've got internal relationships. That's going to be things like your staff and the people within inside your business. You've got your external relationships. Those are the core people outside the business, clients, suppliers. You've got public relationships, as we mentioned, things like SARS, CIPSI, regulators. Then you've got things. And so I think it's a good idea as we're going to start to flesh out your business and the different types of relationships your business has. It's a good idea to start to group them into those sections. So at least we can create some aspect of order here. All right. So as we start to dig in a bit deeper, I want us to start thinking about the different types of relationships that our businesses have. So the internal ones are going to be partners, business partners, your shareholders, your employees, your contractors, which are, types of staff, maybe the funders of the business. These are the types of internal relationships that we have. Everyone following that? Can everyone see the diagrams? I hope that my screen is sharing properly. I assume, since no one has let me know anything in the chat, that I assume it's all sharing properly, or you should be able to see that diagram. So those are internal relationships. Okay, and I want you to start to think about your business. Your business might not have all of those. You might have different ones that we haven't put down on that piece of paper, because all businesses are unique. Then we'd look at the external relationships, right? These are going to be your clients, your suppliers, maybe some potential partners that you have, or joint ventures that you have with other businesses. Who are the other businesses or the people outside of your business that are relevant in your business? Okay, again, it's going to differ for everyone's company. Then we look at the public institutions. Certainly just about all companies are going to have to deal with CIPSI at some point, right? The Companies and Intellectual Property Commission, right? Because if you've ever registered your business, you need to pay your annual returns to CIPSI, and you need to be compliant with CIPSI. Certainly, we've all heard of SARS, the South African Revenue Service. Fortunately or unfortunately, that forms a big part of everyone's business, especially, next week is the end of the financial year. And then you might be in an industry that is regulated, where you might have to think about certain other regulators that other businesses might not have to think of. So, for example, if you are running a business in the aviation industry, right, you've got the Civil Aviation Authority. It's a very relevant relationship in your business. Right, we'll go into my business in a bit as legalese. We'll use legalese as a kind of dummy example, but the Law Society is going to be one. It's our regulator. So you need to think, I don't know who we have here today, but you might think of certain regulators or government institutions that are relevant within your specific business, right? If you are involved in food, you might need certain permissions. If you're involved in medicine, then you're going to have the SAHPRA who is relevant. And depending, if you're in education, there's the Department of Higher Education. So you need to think about which public institutions are relevant for your business and how that relationship is managed. And then the next thing I've just kind of briefly described is things, right? And this is, the software that you may use in your business, any platforms that you run your business with. So, for example, if maybe you do your accounting on a specific piece of software on a platform, or if your business, so someone's put you the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants for Accountants, definitely really relevant. If you're an accounting practice, you can't, and you're ignoring your relationship with the Institute of Chartered Accountants, then you're looking for some issue. So when you get back to things, so let's think about if you were to take someone who ran a business selling goods on Amazon as an example, right? One of the platforms that's core to their business, and they'll need to understand their relationship, is going to be Amazon, their relationship with Amazon, right? So you need to think about your business. which other software is going, or things are going to be crucial in the managing of your business. Another one is going to be intellectual property. How are you managing your intellectual property? What is your relationship with other people around your IP or their IP? The last one, crucial and becoming even more crucial, is data. Cannot ignore data any longer, right? What is your, and data, managing data, it's one of those rights and responsibilities things. If we are collecting data, we don't owe anything to that piece of data, to that, bit file. We owe something to the person who owns that data it belongs to. So it's really important for us to think about our data and as a relationship with our clients. And what are we doing to make sure that relationship is solid? Okay, so I hope everyone started to kind of flesh out their wheel for their business a little bit, right? Again, if you've got questions, please ask them. What I want to do now, I want to take one step deeper, and I want to kind of start to use a live example. I'm going to use legalese because it's an example I understand well. I'm playing devil's advocate. I thought it'd be easier than making up a fake business, but I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit with some of the stuff that, some of the compliance that we talk about. But I think it's a nice example to use, and I suggest as we do this for you to use to utilize your business as an example. Okay, so if we dig in, right, the internal relationships, what are there for legalese? So we've got just the one director, that's me. Right, we've got do we have shareholders? Not at this point, it's just me as a shareholder. Could be in the future, potential shareholders, but once we, start to do employee equity schemes, or if we ever got funders on board, etc., we'd need to flesh that out. But for now, that's all we have, right? Employees, okay, we've got 7 full-time, and contractors, we got about 4 of them. So I think as we do this, I think it's important for you to start to name these people, right? The more specific you can get in your example, the better. So with our employees, I'd write down Kyle and Lauren and Sudden, etc., and I'd write them all down, right? And so there I can start to flesh out what the internal space of my business looks like and who are the different people. Next, external, right? We've got clients. Obviously, we've got clients. But the clients can be fleshed out a little bit more, because to some extent, we've got 2 types of clients. We've got clients that we do ad hoc work for, and we've got retainer clients. These are 2 different, while we've got lots of different types of clients in different industries, maybe nonprofits or tech companies or creative agencies, that isn't really a decent distinction for me and my business around our types of clients. I think a better one which describes the relationship is going to be ad hoc clients and retainer clients, because we deal with them fundamentally a little bit differently. Right? And I want to invite you to think about that with your business. What is your different client relationships? How many do you have? Do you just have the one, or are there several? Then we've got suppliers, right? And we do work with our suppliers a little bit differently, but not too differently, right? We get their contract, we understand their terms, and we go ahead. That's going to be our accountant, that's going to be our marketing companies, and there might be some other ones. What about the public? Right? As I mentioned earlier, CIPSE, SARS, really important. Oh, sorry, I've gone wrong page. CIPSE and SARS, really important. Law Society, it's important for us. And to some extent, that's the end of our public institutions that we deal with, right? There might, if I stretch my brain, I might be able to think of other ones, but that's kind of it in terms of our compliance. So we need to make sure our kids happy. We need to have a good relationship with. Then it gets to the things. Right? So for us, data, super important, right? If we ignore people's data, ignore the way that we deal with data, we're looking for trouble. People trust us with really important things and really important data, and we need to make sure that we are keeping that, that we have a plan in action to make sure that we deal with people's data safely and legally. Right? Then there's certain software. We use Xero, we use Trello, we use Workflow Max, we use Slack, we use a whole lot of different pieces of software, which we're going to dig into the legal compliance there. But I think for now, that it's good to just start to list these things out. And then when it comes to IP, certainly we've got lots of IP that we use. We've got legal resources that we've developed. We've got processes, we've got onboarding documents, we've got a lot of stuff which makes legalese into legalese. We've got that stuff, and it's really important to us. So we need to make sure that stuff is managed in a solid way, in a legal way, and to make sure that it's kept safe and compliant. Right? Okay, so I hope at this point everyone has started to kind of flesh out their map a little bit. If you're not able to do this live in the session, don't worry about it. I think that this is going to be a good backbone for you to use this example afterwards and to do this afterwards. Make us up a cup of tea and close the doors and to your office and kind of start to flesh out this mind map. Right, and then the next and kind of final step of this is to really take a bit of a deeper look into things, okay? And this is where things get a little bit harder and we need to start to be a little bit more honest with ourselves and our business. And this is really where the magic of a legal roadmap comes into play. So, sorry, I think that's disappeared. Here we go. So now it's about us doing a little bit more of an investigation into these legal relationships. And this is going to tell us whether we have work to do in terms of getting our legal compliance and safety up to scratch, or whether it's kind of sorted. Right, so I'll continue to use the example of legalese and play devil's advocate a little bit, but this is something you need to do for your business. Cool. So director, all sorted there. I don't need an employment agreement. There's no external shareholders. Cool, nothing to be done there. Shareholders. Do we need a shareholders agreement? No, we don't. I'm just the one shareholder. Do I have share certificates? Yes, all sorted. They're on the Dropbox somewhere, all sorted. Good. Employees. Is my relationship with my employees managed correctly? Do they've got employment agreements? Yes, they do. But we've actually been instituting new policies recently as we've kind of adapted over COVID and changed our remote work, changed our bonus policies and leave policies. And those are actually not down on paper anywhere. Those are, have kind of just been things that we've talked about and policies we've instituted. I need to get those down on paper. So that's definitely something which needs a little bit of work. What about for our contractors? Yeah, it's kind of the same. Everyone's under contract, which is fine. There's confidentiality clauses in those contracts, which is really important in our line of work. But yeah, again, we haven't really updated our contractors' policies since COVID, and lots of things have changed. So I'm going to need to look into those things. So, what I'll do is I'd put a little red tick and I'd make a note there. Cool. We need to institute policies, and we need to and we need to relook at our contractors' agreements. Brilliant. Cool. I've got 2 things on my to-do list. What about our clients? Is everything sorted with our clients? Yes. So we've got terms of engagement in place for our ad hoc clients. We've got retainer agreements in place for our retainer clients. So our legal relationship with them is managed. I understand the relationship with them and it's managed. But actually, quite recently, our payment terms have changed. Right? We've adapted our payment terms to make sure that to allow people to be able to pay our invoices over time if they need kind of some aspect, not quite credit, but if they need to pay over a few months, that hasn't been added to the payment terms. And we need to do that. So I'll write that down. And so I guess you're starting to get the idea. What I do is I flesh out each one and I look at the relationship that I have with every single one of the people that I wrote down on my piece of paper. And if at all, in a big way or in a small way, I say, well, that relationship is not actually well managed enough, or I don't understand that relationship well enough, then you need to make a mark over there, and you need to make sure that you are doing something to make sure that relationship is managed. Is that making sense? So we would carry on. Our suppliers, accountants, etc. It's all sorted. We've got agreements in place with them. I understand our payment terms. I understand what happens if we want to cancel. All good over there. What about SARS, right? SARS, we are all sorted and up to date. Our accountant is actually busy dealing with that this week. And, next week we'll have our provisional tax to pay. And so that's all being sorted. SIPC, annual returns have been paid. Law Society are good with us. Cool. I have some big ticks there. But if anything there, I said, well, I don't actually know what's happening with my tax, or, the regulator, I haven't actually engaged with the regulator in a while, paid my renewal fees. You're going to need to sort that out. Data, right? For us, we've been going through our POPI action list, got our policies up on the website, notified our clients, we've updated our agreements, and we've been going through our policies, our POPI action list, as we call it, step by step to make sure that we are sorted. Our data policies are up to scratch and that all of our clients' data is protected. So practically we're safe, legally we're compliant. Big tick, right? What about the platforms? So Xero and Trello we are sorted with. It's really simple. They give you their terms, you sign it. Generally, it's quite simple. But why do I think it's really important to add software onto this? It's because one of the things that we saw what happened last year when COVID hit is that suddenly a lot of businesses really unfortunately shut down, right? And if your business is reliant on another business staying open, so let's say, for example, you sell things on Amazon. What happens if Amazon stops letting you sell things on it? If they change their policies, they could shut your business down, right? What happens if you are, if you use a key piece of, if you maybe run a fintech company, okay, and you have a core piece of software which integrates between an API which integrates between your bank and your company. What if that API goes down or goes bankrupt? What happens to your business? So I think it's really, really important as you're doing this, as you've put down different software which your business is reliant upon, for you to investigate and interrogate that and think, well, what happens if that business shuts down? What happens to our data if it's lost? So what happens in those situations? And that's really, like, that is often the role of lawyers. Lawyers are risk managers. We're looking at where there's risk and we're trying to make sure that we minimize on any risk. I hope that makes sense. The last one I've put there is IP. IP is crucial. And the way that we look at IP is you look at IP in relationship to anyone else. So is your IP protected? So your brand name, your logo, etc., is that protected? Cool. Do you have any IP in the business outside of that you want to keep protected? Cool. You need to make sure that you've got a plan of action in place for that. What about your employees or your contractors? Do they have access to your IP? And if they do, which I'm sure they do, is your relationship with them protected so they know that they can't steal it? So what we do with IP is we kind of spin out all the different people that have access to IP that's important to you, and we make sure that your relationship with all of them is one that they cannot take your IP and steal it, or they cannot use it without your permission. Remember, ideas cannot be owned. You can't own an idea. If you come up with something, it's just anyone who wants to do it can do it. But the only way you can manage ideas and certain types of IP is by binding people into confidentiality or restraints around that IP. So it's really important for you to look at your IP and look at the people that have access to it and think, what are you doing to make sure that they can't steal it? Okay. So then from there, what you basically are going to do is should have this mind map, which is starting to get fleshed out, which is covering all the different aspects of your business and covering what you are doing in order to make sure that you are legally safe and compliant. So you take all the green ticks, you can ignore at the ends, and all the little red action points you're going to take and put into a list. And anywhere where you have a question or uncertainty, no matter how big or small, you need to do something about it. Some of these things will be massive. If you said, well, listen, I've got shareholders, but I don't have a shareholders agreement, that should be a big red star. And if you said, well, I've got employees, but we haven't updated our IP policy, that will be a smaller star, but it will still be something an action point to do. And I guess with legal issues, uncertainty is almost always the cause of them. Right? Sometimes you land up in a dispute where you deal with someone who has done something bad or something, really illegal or unlawful. That does happen. But for the most part, legal issues arise where there's any sort of uncertainty between two parties. So what we look for with this is we look for uncertainty and we look at how we're going to fix that uncertainty. Once you've done this, once you've got this list together, you can work on it by yourself and start ticking the things off. You can go to a lawyer, and that will cost you a little, but I think it's often a worthwhile thing to do, depending on the complexity of it. But what you will have, they've always said, well, you don't know what you don't know. But going through this exercise is going to really start to highlight what you don't know. Let's just see, we've got a question now. How does one protect IP, like methodologies, etc.? Is it through policies or employment contracts? Great question. I'll deal with that now. So what I kind of keep getting back to over here is that managing your legal compliance and safety is really one about managing relationships. And as you flesh this thing out, you're going to start to see which relationships need attention. And from there, what you want to do is two things. You want to prioritize them, what's most important, what's least important, and then you want to get to fixing each item. This is pretty much a legal road mapping. This is pretty much what lawyers do and how we do it. And again, it's crucial to do this at certain intervals in your business, either at the start or once a year. I really think the beginning of 2020 or the end of the financial year is a really good time to go about it. And my guarantee is that if you do this, while it's a bit of a mission, it saves you time in the future because you prevent issues from coming up. Just before we go into a live example of it, just answer this question, protecting methodologies. So it kind of depends on the type of methodology and what it is. Generally, methodologies are not protectable because they're ideas. So unless it is a patentable process or a design of some sort that you can get a design registration on, generally the way that you're going to protect against methodologies in your business is by dealing with playing the man and not the ball. Right? You need to make sure that anyone who has access to that methodology understands that they cannot copy it themselves or do it by themselves in a new business. Good question. That's quite a simple answer to a complex question, but I think that should be good. So what I want to show you now is what we've done with this sort of thing. So we go into a little bit more detail over here just to kind of show you. So we've got this thing we call a legal road mapping. And what we do is we go through this process in asking you a whole lot of questions, right? So we carried out by Eitan, the business name. It's, we can choose the Joe Shawarma. It's a little shawarma joint that we're going to be, using as an example. And then we go through this thing, we ask all these questions, right? Is there more than one founder? Has a shareholders agreement been formalized? Does it need to be reviewed? Well, yes, it does, because we haven't reviewed it. Do the founders work in the business? No, the founder actually doesn't. Corporate governance, are subsidiary the annual returns up to date? No, they're not. Are the directors correctly reflected on the company's corporation documents? And we basically go through this thing. And as we go deeper and deeper, the questions start to expand a little bit. So is your company externally funded? If you press yes, we get to different questions. That what it's designed to do is to go deeper and deeper into the problem. And the results at the end of it would be something like this. I've already done it for Joe Shawarma earlier, but it would be something like this. So we get a report which will outline all the different what we called failed items. So no shareholders agreement. We do need assistance with mediation around the shareholders agreement. Are the company's annual returns up to date? No, so we need to do that. So we basically so once we go through that whole process, we get to all these different failed items, and that is what creates our legal roadmap. And this process has been put together. So this is just a report that I've pulled out for a dummy example. I've put together this report that we pulled out ends with all these different action items, as we call them. And this gives you the detail in order to kind of have your roadmap, prioritize it, and then get to work on it. So, I mean, not quite a sales pitch, but a small just kind of show of what we're doing, what we do. This process has been designed with a whole lot of lawyers over many years to really start to bring out all the intricate examples of where we're going to need to do some work. Once you have this, you can get to work on it over the period of a year. Once you've prioritized, you can do it all in one go. It's yours to kind of figure out what you're going to do with it. But at least you've got the information to know where you want to go. And that is really legal road mapping. And that's really about it. Short and sweet today, which is, I think, good for, I'm sure everyone's got stuff that they want to get to on Thursday afternoon. And just to kind of end off, I just want to say it's a new year and it's really time to get planning. The financial year ends next week. And I think it's a really good time to make New Year's resolutions, whether at the beginning of the year or financial New Year's resolutions. And often this stuff can get left to the bottom of the list. But it's really crucial, because if you want to grow a sustainable long-term business, I think that it's really important to get these aspects done, to at least be ticking them off the list. And certainly if you ever looking to raise money, funders are going to want to see this sorts of thing. They're going to want to see that you're working on this. Or if you're ever looking to sell your business, any due diligence is going to pick up these issues really quickly. So, avoiding issues down the line, saving you time and money, it's worth legal road mapping and strategizing your legal issues at the start. And just think of that time that takes, if you ever land up in one dispute with a client or an employee or a shareholder or a fund or whatever it is, think of the heartache you'd have to go through at that. Think of saving yourself that. So be like Joe Shawarma and definitely plan things ahead for the year that's coming. Thank you for everyone for coming today and taking part. I think what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to hang around for a few minutes. If there's more questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. And yeah, but if anyone wants to sign off, this is a good time to do so. All right. Yeah, such a pleasure, Sean. Such a pleasant pleasure, Janine. I see there's another question over here. How much do your services cost? So I mean that, it depends on what it is that you need, and what it is that you need. Our process with the sort of legal roadmap is always to flesh out what people need and to kind of cost it from there. The idea at Legalese is that we want to make sure that our services are as affordable as possible for startups and growing businesses. So, come chat to us if you want if we want to do the sessions. What we charge for this sort of sessions for our retainer clients, it's free. So if you're on a retainer with Legalese or a good existing client, we do the legal roadmap for free, and then you're armed with it, and then we can quote out what you want afterwards. Do you have a high level do you have this at a high level for business, or are you able to drill down to specific sectors for compliance? Yeah, totally. Well, I think that this example and the one that we put together really works well for bigger businesses. When it comes to specific areas of compliance around FSB, I'd be interested to look at the type of compliance issues you're trying to deal with. This general legal roadmap product might not work for that, but you'd have to sit with one of our team that understands compliance around FSBs, and we could definitely drill into that. That's definitely a service that lawyers like us offer. Let's have a look over here. Michelle, thanks. Such a pleasure, Michelle. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, this definitely works for startups 100%. So yeah, I really want to stress that process of doing legal strategy is something which, when I use Legalese as an example, even us as a law firm, there's always stuff to tinker on. There might not be big glaring things like we haven't done our data compliance, but there's always stuff to kind of tinker on and to make sure your business is stronger. And, as you kind of build your strategy for the year, this is a really useful thing to do in planning out your year. So certainly it can be used for startups or bigger businesses. One question over here. If I get a legal roadmap for you guys, can Legalese provide me with all the services mentioned? Yes, totally. If you do a legal roadmap with us, we can obviously help you fix any of the issues that we point out. We're not just here about pointing out issues, but fixing them as well. Okay, great. Unless there's any last minute questions, we're going to wrap it up. For anyone that wants to get more information about these webinars, just sign up to our newsletter or follow us on the different social medias on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook. We also have a blog on our website with loads of interesting information and articles that our team have written on legal topics. So definitely go check that out. You can sign up to our newsletter as well, which will notify you about any different webinars that we do. Question. What's in your hair care regime? That's a secret for now. Thanks for that question. Desmond, such a pleasure. Okay, cool. Excellent, guys and girls. Thank you all so much for joining. It was really great to chat to everyone today. Hopefully at some point we'll be able to do this in person in the future. And if you need anything or want to do a legal road mapping, you just get in touch with us. So we're here to help. All right. All the best.